Welcome everybody. Today, to get moving forward and continue sharing information and helping other people, which is what I love to do, we're going to go over the digestive system. We're going to do good digestion, bad digestion. And today has been a particularly challenging day emotionally, so I'm hoping that the words are going to come and I'll be able to remember everything that I want to say. But if I do forget something, I can always post it in the comments. And if you have questions, please feel free to answer. But because I'm not close to the computer, I will have to answer them afterwards. So I want to go through the digestive system and talk about right from the start what creates good digestion and what can impede your digestion. And digestion is really the cornerstone of health, because if you can't absorb your nutrients, then your body can't use the material to effectively build a healthy and thriving system. So it's not only what you eat, it's what you actually absorb. And it's also what you eliminate. So we'll talk about that as we go through. So the very first step of the digestive system is how you feel about your food. So if you are anticipating a really wonderful, tasty meal, you're thinking about it, you're hungry, your body starts creating chemicals that are going to help your digestion right away. So just the whole act of preparing your food and being grateful that you're about to receive a really nourishing meal is going to put you in a better state to digest than if you have an aversion to your food, or if you have an emotional reaction that's negative to the food you're about to eat. So we want to be eating food and understanding that it's nourishing and caring for our body, rather than having guilty feelings or resentful feelings towards our food, because already that's creating different signals in the body. The next step is our mouth. So when we are chewing our food, that is the very first mistake that a lot of people can make, is that they inhale their food and they hardly chew and they wolf it down and they do it so quickly, and then they get on to the next task in their day and they aren't really focused on adequately chewing our food. So chewing your food might not sound important if you don't know why we're doing it. It's not just so we can taste and enjoy our food. The actual mechanical breakdown of the food happening in our mouth is decreasing the surface, it's increasing the surface area of that food, so that our digestive enzymes and our digestive juices have more surface area to work on to further break that food down into a very easily assimilated liquid that then can pass into our body. So our entire digestive tract is almost like outside. It's our outside inside. It's not really in our body until it makes its way through our various absorption channels and into the bloodstream and the lymphatic system. Then it's in. So a friend of mine, his name is Garlic, if you end up watching this, Garlic, he brought up sort of a donut analogy, and he talks about the body, the digestive tract kind of be the hole in the donut. So that is really true, and one of the very best ways that you can start your digestive process off really well is to chew your food adequately. As you're chewing, there are enzymes that are secreted out of your tongue, and that is called lingual lipase, and that starts fat digestion. Now that's not actually activated until it makes its way to your stomach. The other one that started in your mouth is actually secreted by the salivary glands, and that's your amylase. So you have a salivary amylase, which starts starch digestion. So the more you chew your food, you'll notice the sweeter it becomes, and the more liquidy and easier it is for your body to digest. So the very first good digestion tip I can give you is to chew food well. So once we have chewed our food really well, and then the bad digestion would be inadequate chewing. So once we've chewed our food really well and we swallow it, it goes down the esophagus and into the stomach. So all of our organs are really crammed in together. It's funny when you do a drawing or you see those, plastic representations, because it's not like everything is separate and laid out. Everything is really squished together, and then you see what a pregnant woman's digestive system looks like, and it's shocking that it works at all, but it's really squished in there. So I've got the liver sort of in behind showing here, and the pancreas hiding behind the stomach. So our food's going to come into the stomach. Now, if all is well, you're a really healthy person, you're going to have a nice amount of stomach acid and a really nice low pH in the stomach, and that is going to initiate protein digestion, as well as kill any harmful microbes that are, you know, piggybacking on that food that you've consumed. So that's going to come into the stomach. The low pH, the high stomach acid, is going to kill any microbes. It activates enzymes in the food that are secreted by the cells lining the stomach to help break down your protein molecules and pull them apart. So you've got these really large protein molecules, and you need them to be broken down into smaller ones so that when they make it to the small intestine, the enzymes that the pancreas is going to secrete can then work on those. So if you've got a really great healthy digestive system, then protein digestion is going to happen without a hitch. You're going to have the food roll around in here for quite a long time. The hydrochloric acid is activating pepsinogen. You're going to get pepsin, which is breaking down that protein into smaller amino acids. And then you're going to also be making sure that those microbes are killed. Fat digestion is also from the lingula lipase is starting to be activated a little bit. Things are being broken down into smaller and smaller bits. So if all of that goes off with a hitch, then when everything gets to the small intestine, then further enzymes from the pancreas are going to be secreted. And before we go on, I want to talk about what happens if you don't have adequate stomach acid levels. So if you have got stomach acid issues, then you're not going to have a low enough pH or enough acid in here to adequately digest your protein. That's a big deal. Most of our body is built of proteins. So there are lots that our body can make, but there are essential amino acids that we can't. We have to get those from our food. And if we aren't eating them or we aren't digesting and absorbing them, then our health is going to be compromised. So if you don't have enough stomach acid, now this can be due to many reasons. You might have a lot of digestive issues that are causing an imbalance in good bacteria, and that can eventually affect the nervous system and can even cause microbes that would normally not be able to survive in the stomach. As the pH starts to rise, then they start to live in the stomach where they otherwise would not be able to. And they can cause ulcers. So you've heard of H. pylori. It was actually discovered, the man who discovered it won the Nobel Prize for discovering that actually it's not stress that causes ulcers, it's microbes. It's the H. pylori bacteria. Now, stress plays a role in our digestive system. It can affect even the microbes that are able to live here. So if we are under chronic stress, absolutely that can impede digestion and could also result in ulcers, but it's not the stress on its own that's causing the ulcers. If you take really good care of yourself, your adrenal function is high, you can get through that stress without suffering ulcers and digestive issues. So it's not stress on its own, and it's not ever one thing on its own. It's always the interaction of these various components that can cause problems. So if you don't have enough stomach acid, it might also be nutrient deficiencies. So all of the cells in our entire body, including our digestive cells, require certain vitamins and minerals to function. If you don't eat those nutrients, then your body can't do the work. If you are unable to absorb those nutrients, then even if you're eating them, your body is still not getting them. And again, your body doesn't have the cellular nutrition that it needs to carry out its functions. The other thing that can happen is that you consume a lot of anti-nutrients. And anti-nutrients are anything that actually robs further nutrition from your body than you're getting. So things like chemicals, pesticide, herbicide residues, dead food, canned food, processed food, too much carbohydrate, too much protein, all of these things that are not nutrients to the body become a burden. So even certain synthetic vitamins and minerals, if you're taking them, it's not just if they get absorbed, it's also if they're eliminated. So a lot of people taking synthetic vitamins and minerals don't realize that it can actually create imbalances, because if your body doesn't need or can't recognize all of those synthetic vitamins, then it actually has to use up reserves of vitamins and minerals to get rid of them and get them back out of the body. So if your body is not getting enough nutrition, and then it's getting a lot of toxins or chemicals on your cleaning, your skincare, or on the food itself, or in water, your body has to get rid of all that, and it takes nutrition away from you. So that's how deficiencies can be created. And if you have certain deficiencies, it can be really hard to create enough stomach acid. So if you don't have adequate stomach acid, maybe you actually get heartburn. A lot of people think that heartburn is always an over-acid condition. It's actually most of the time it's the opposite. Heartburn signifies that you don't have enough stomach acid most of the time. And the reason that you get heartburn is sometimes that when the starchy carbohydrate gets to the stomach, all these microbes that normally couldn't possibly live in the stomach start acting on that carbohydrate, and fermentation happens, and you get gas buildup, and you get this protein that's not breaking down effectively, and it's turning into this sticky, lumpy mass, and it's bumping into this sphincter here. And as that gas puts pressure on the sphincter and the food is kind of bumping up into it, also some of those microbes can actually create neurotoxins that numb that sphincter so it doesn't close all the way. So all those contributing factors lead to whatever little stomach acid is in here backing up the esophagus. And the esophagus is not designed to have those strong pHs and stuff come back up into it, so it can damage the esophagus. And if that's happening all the time, then it's known as GERD, or gastroesophagus reflux disease. And you can also end up getting esophagus cancer, which is what happened to my grandmother. And her whole life, she didn't realize that heartburn was such a big deal, so she just took antacids and she didn't say anything to anybody. And I think that's fairly common. I think 20% of people have stomach acid heartburn problems, and frequently are just taking antacids and not realizing that when you take an antacid and you knock out all your stomach acid, you've erased the initial symptom of that heartburn, but you've impeded your protein digestion. And if the person at the beginning of the assembly line messes up, there's nothing anybody in the entire rest of this assembly line of digestion can do to correct the problem. So it's really important that we start off really great at the beginning and continue all the way through, because if we don't chew our food, we don't have adequate stomach acid, then we are not going to be able to absorb adequately the nutrients in our food. And so, yeah, I'm just going to write that down before we move on. Great stomach acid and low stomach acid. So if you are someone who does take antacids frequently, send me a message, because it's so much that I would need to go over with you and figure out. I can't do it in a 20-minute Facebook Live video. There's no way. There's just too many complicated factors, but it's fixable. And if other people have been able to do it, and like hundreds and thousands of other people have been able to correct it permanently without the use of drugs and live a very pain-free, no heartburn life, then it's absolute proof that you can do it too. So it's not, those people are not different from you, and there are actual easy to follow steps that you can take to correct that problem. So the stomach, after it's been in the stomach, you're going to find all that food comes down into the small intestine. So this is actually the colon, and the small intestine is all squished up in here. So the food is going to pass into the small intestine, and that is where the liver is creating bile. The bile is stored in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder is going to secrete that bile into the small intestine. The pancreas is secreting not only your insulin, it also makes most of your digestive enzymes. So the enzymes responsible for your nucleotides, for your amino acids, for your the rest of your carbohydrate, your lipase, so your fat digestion, the rest of the other amylase, so your other starch digestion, all of those enzymes are produced by the pancreas. And again, your pancreas is such an incredibly important organ. If this fails because of poor lifestyle and deficiency, it's really, really hard to bounce back from that. So you want to prevent those things, because as we get older and age-related deterioration that's naturally already happening, we can speed that up. You can actually speed up the process of aging on your physical body just by how you're taking care of yourself. So you want to make sure that your body is being flooded with nutrition and that you're putting as few toxins as you can control into your body. Of course, nothing is 100%. We can't control the fact that a lot of our air, water, and soil has been polluted, but there's a big difference between a crop being sprayed several times a day, every single day until harvest time, and then packed with preservatives to keep it stable on a shelf for 10 years before it loses all edible, whatever you would call it, and an organic farm next door where just the occasional waft of wind brings a tiny little bit. You know, I'd rather eat that food that was really grown and they tried not to poison it versus the food that's daily just doused in poison, you know, sometimes dozens of different kinds. And those poisons that they're using, there are very poor safety studies done on individual chemicals, but there are no safety studies showing the combined effects of all these chemicals. The most recent studies by the USDA for pesticide residues was showing kale had sometimes, actually commonly, and 92% of the time, kale had high pesticide residues on it. But a lot of those, I think it was 72% or more of the kale samples had up to 18 different pesticide residues found on them. So there are no studies that are showing how these chemicals are working together in our body and what havoc they're wreaking, let alone what those chemicals are doing to children and pregnant women. And we do know that quite a few of those chemicals have been classified as probable carcinogens. A lot of them are neurotoxic to developing fetuses. So it's no mystery why we have such a skyrocketing rate of cancers and childhood cancers and other diseases when we're poisoning our food supply. I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm saying it's a big deal. It's one of the big things that's happening. So the food has been worked on by the stomach. It's made its way to the small intestine. The liver, the liver has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of functions in the body. So its sole function is not only detoxification, that's one of them. And whatever toxins, including pesticide residues, that the liver is picking up out of the blood ends up into bile. And then the bile goes into the small intestine. And the small intestine is where that bile needs to bind to fiber in order to, and soft, bulky fiber, soluble fiber, in order to leave the body. So if that bile comes in here and you have not been eating adequate fiber, guess what happens to that bile? It gets reabsorbed. And bile is primarily a huge source of our cholesterol. So if you are worried about cholesterol and you've got high cholesterol levels, make sure you're eating enough soluble fiber, because then your body is constantly having to make more and not making some and reabsorbing that bile, as well as reabsorbing all of those toxins for it to deal with again in this cyclical fashion. So your bile ends up in the small intestine. Bile is not only for toxins, it also emulsifies your fat. So when your food comes in here, it's going to mix with the bile, and the bile acts like soap, and it makes the fat molecules really, really small so that the enzymes secreted by the pancreas, again, it's a surface area thing, instead of having a great big molecule of fat, now you've got eeny weeny little droplets, and then the enzymes can work on the outside of those little droplets and they can get absorbed into the body. So your pancreas is secreting enzymes, your liver secretes bile, all of that is being broken down into as small of little bits as possible, and then it goes through your small intestine, and your small intestine has got these little hair-like projections called villi, and these are heavily vascularized. They also have a lymphatic duct called a lacteal in here. So your fat actually goes into the lymphatic system, and the rest of your nutrients are going into the bloodstream. And all on the outside of this little villi are little chairs, if you will, or receptor sites. So you can picture them like, you know, surrounding every single little bit of space in your digestive tract. And those little chairs are home to bacteria, your good bacteria that you have evolved over thousands and thousands of years of human evolution to have come and made a home in you to have this symbiotic beneficial relationship, live on these cellular epithelial surfaces on your digestive cells. And these bacteria make up to 70% or more of the energy that this digestive cell requires to do its work. So what happens if you don't have the right bacteria living here? Now, why might you not? You might have had a really heavy course of antibiotics, or even a course of, of not heavy-duty antibiotics. You might eat a lot of meat or dairy that has antibiotic residues because the animal is given so much antibiotic in their food just for them to survive long enough to end up on your plate, because those animals are inherently sick because of what they're eating and their living conditions. So if you're eating antibiotics or you're eating a really high sugar diet, your digestive cells don't love sugar, your good bacteria doesn't love sugar, and they can only absorb so much. And after that, you're going to be feeding yeast. Now, yeast, including candida, are not inherently bad. Small numbers are normal and actually healthy in the digestive system. It's when you eat so much carbohydrate and starch and sugar that your own good bacteria can't handle it. It's like leaving a bowl of flour and mixing it with water on your counter. Yeast are going to come in and start to break that down and ferment it. And that's just what nature does with excess carbohydrates. Yeast come in and clean it up. So it's not the fault of the yeast for causing an imbalance and having candida issues. It's actually the environment that we're creating is promoting yeast. So you need to fix the environment, not just knock out the yeast. And you do that by changing the way that you eat. So we really want to make sure these good bacteria are sitting on these receptor sites. They're making more than half of the energy that our digestive cells need to pull in that nutrition, but they're also secreting a bunch of different chemicals that are keeping harmful organisms away. They also directly communicate with our nervous system and our immune system, and they can even affect our emotions on an emotional and behavioral level. So there's a huge amount of research being done right now on microbes and all of the ways they affect us. I could do another 2-hour lecture just on that, so I'll continue on the digestive path. But as far as digestion goes, if you don't have good bacteria, you're not going to have good digestion. So we'll put adequate enzymes. Now, if you have had a deficiency and you know that you don't have enough digestive enzymes, you could be a cancer patient or just someone who has a lot of digestive stress, then get some good quality digestive enzymes. In the interim, you can take those very safely to help support your digestive process so that you can adequately absorb those nutrients. So enzymes are huge, and good bacteria. So the bad digestion is going to lack enzymes. No enzymes, no proper breakdown, no proper absorption. You're also going to end up with sticky, undigested food that's coming down and getting stuck and literally starting to rot in your digestive tract, feeding unhealthy organisms. So that's when you're going to see a lot of, or smell a lot of really stinky gas, and having a lot of gas is if your digestive system is going to have a lot of impacted matter that's because it wasn't digested adequately. There have been several famous obese actors who, when they had their autopsy done, were found to have several kilos of undigested, impacted fecal matter in their colons. So that's an important thing to think about, because our digestive cell, or our digestive tract, is one cell thick. It's not like this big wall that keeps everything out. And if we've got a lot of damage, we've also got a lot of inflammation. That's how leaky gut starts, and we get undigested or improperly digested, or all these microbe things being able to get into our bloodstream where otherwise they would not be able to. All right, lack enzymes and wrong microbes. All right, so the small intestine is where all of the bulk of the absorption of your nutrition is coming from. The colon mostly deals with fluid. So that's where you're going to have a lot of your fluid be reabsorbed, so water. And if that's not happening, then that's when you're going to see diarrhea and problems there. And I think that might be all that I want to touch on for today. That's quite a bit already. Send me a comment to let me know if this is overwhelming already, or if this was enough information that you could absorb in a single video. And yeah, hopefully, actually, before we close, some things you can do to promote good digestion. Don't dilute your stomach acid. So chew your food well. Don't be drinking a lot of, especially ice cold drinks and pops and things like that, because that's going to dilute your stomach acid and make it harder to break down your protein. So you can have a little bit of like a warm tea, or like a green tea, or a ginger tea, or just a little bit of water or something like that with your meals, but don't have an excessively large glass of any beverage right before you eat or with your meal, because you're going to dilute your juices. The other thing you can do, take digestive enzymes. Make sure that you have, to make sure you have great stomach acid too, you can add a little bit of apple cider vinegar to your water or tea, or you can drink cabbage juice or have sauerkraut, because cabbage has a great property of increasing stomach acid. So, and sauerkraut, again, a great source of good bacteria. So I think that's everything I want to say about digestion right now. But let me know if you enjoyed this, because we could do another deeper version of this. And also, I would love to do some more videos like this over the next couple weeks. So let me know some health topics that you would be interested in learning more about. So I hope that you're all excited to get onto this side of things, into good digestion, so you can promote health and well-being for your body. Have a great day, everybody.